Senator Scullion, you have the call.
Mr Acting Deputy President, thank you for the call. One of the things that disheartens me is not only the sad stories about hardship, disadvantage and disconnection in remote Indigenous communities. I think it's more important and a bigger impact on me is the way that these communities are perceived by others. I believe that the refrain of fatalism and pessimism about Aboriginal and Islander Australians' ability to provide a positive narrative is a great stumbling block. The naysayers may not be aware that Aboriginal and Islander people are breaking out of these negative stereotypes without anyone's assistance. For far too long we have failed to recognise that Indigenous people have the same aspirations as everyone else. They want their children to have a good future. They want to be able to feel worthwhile, and they want to make a contribution. For too long, policies in this country have, even if well-intentioned, deprived Aboriginal and Islander people of the opportunities that a lot of us take for granted. Only last week I visited one of the most impoverished communities in Australia, which has received so much negative press for a very long time. Mutijulu in the Northern Territory. Yet I discovered that in that community people were defying their detractors and are preparing to look for work and are preparing to create work opportunities rather than waiting for work to find them. The Aboriginal people in the region refer to themselves as the Anganyu. The Anganyu women and men from Mutijulu in the region are working at the Ayers Rock Resort, and the downstream effect cannot be underestimated. I met with Ricky Armstrong and his wife Melissa Williamson, who moved from Armada and Freegon in South Australia to Mutijulu to secure real jobs. The pride of this man was evident, as he said how he wanted his family to get ahead, knowing that he is doing just that. Ayers Rock Resort serves a real purpose. It is real commercial enterprise and needs people with skills to work there, and they want to employ Aboriginal Australians. Mr President, a number of corporations and organisations, their boards get out of bed every day and they simply have one agenda: to make money for their shareholders. And I have to say that the way that Ayers Rock Resort is run is that there is another imperative, apparent to me equally as important, and that's the employment of Aboriginal people, not only from around Australia, but particularly from Anganyu lands adjacent to the resort. And I think the fact that that is what they're motivated by is indicative of the great results that they've had at Ayers Rock Resort in terms of engaging with Aboriginal Australians. Ricky works as part of the resort's construction team together with Darren Melbunker, and I know Darren well. He comes actually from far as away as Hermansburg, and he now has a construction and landscaping role at the resort. Now, these people are role models for younger men and women in their communities. They know that they're making their elders and their families proud. They're honing their skills and they're adding to them. Against data that would show that the employment rate for Indigenous people has declined over the last 6 years, what is happening at Ayers Rock Resort shows that the transformation of disempowerment to hope. When the resort was purchased in 2010, there were only a handful of Aboriginal people being employed. Now there are over 200 Aboriginal people working there, and this number is increasing. They come from all over Australia to get work, and to get training, to connect, and also they tell me to charge up their cultural batteries. The 37 people that work there are Anganyu people from across the APY lands moving to Mutijulu to look for work at the Rock. 58 trainees undertaking either Certificate 2 or 3 qualifications in hospitality through its National Indigenous Training Academy, which offers a career pathway at the resort within the wider Australian tourism and hospitality industry. There have been 47 graduates to date. Trainees are employed by the resort whilst they're undertaking their training, and when they complete the course they're guaranteed a real job. And of course there can be no more training for training's sake. Work experience programs have also been established to give over 30 Anganyu school students from around the region workplace experience, which often lead to a traineeship at the resort. There are those who supply goods and services to the resort, which includes 20 local Aboriginal businesses. Mr. President, it only comes from a determination of a corporation or a business that this will happen. This must happen for those changes to take place. Uluru Aboriginal Tours, Anganyu Jobs, Muraku Arts, Warburton Glass, Ernabella Arts, Mani are enriching cultural experiences, many of which I've experienced myself, Mr. President, and I can certainly commend to others. Niku Tingu from Mutijulu is the supervisor of a group of 13 Anganyu women who work in the domestic cleaning service that basically run all the domestic cleaning within the resort. And like any parent, Ninku drops off her 5-year-old son to primary school before going to work every day. Xavier Kitson, also from Mutijulu, one of the Anganyu supervisors on the men's landscaping team, is looking forward to 2 of his granddaughters commencing traineeships at the resort in February 2014. Other Anganyu seniors include senior advisors, so these are parts of their management team. Senior advisor Alison Hunt, Dorothea Randall is in the senior position as Indigenous Employee Coordinator, Leroy Lester, Anganyu Senior Public Relations Officer. These are significant tasks that are moving into the substantial management tasks as part of the management team. So what's so significant about these stories? People in Mutijulu told me this is the first time they've had real paying jobs outside the welfare systems. The jobs the Anganyu people hold at the resort have provided hope for workers and for their children who are learning an important lesson, that they can succeed. Work isn't something that someone else does, it's for them as well. Mr Coase Klein, the Managing Director of Voyages Indigenous Tourism Australia that runs the resort, that was told when he first got there that it wouldn't be possible to hire local Indigenous Australians in the resort. In the past, the people of Mutijulu were not only overlooked as potential workers, but there was a deep-seating conviction that I have personally struck that Anganyu people simply wouldn't work there. It was too big a step. How wrong they were. Mr Klein, who has international experience in the management of the world's greatest hotels, told me that while the resort employs people from all over Australia, the resort had a Anganyu first policy. Mr Klein is passionate about the employment of local Indigenous Australians, and I'm just delighted to see he's now offering key roles in management. He told me that the resort's also exploring the possibility of cadetships and management programs. My visit to the resort, Mr President, I've been travelling around Australia, and particularly in the Northern Territory, for a very long time. And I see small movements forward with some very well-meaning employment engagement programs. But I'm convinced the fundamental change that we need in corporate Australia is to make one of the KPIs of the executive to ensure that we are engaging our first Australians in work and genuine employment. When that happens, Mr President, I think the sort of changes that are so visible at Ayers Rock Resort in the centre of Australia, and that should be a beacon, well-positioned beacon to the rest of corporate Australia, that with the right effort and the right approach, they too can achieve the sort of outcomes we've seen at the Rock. I take this opportunity to congratulate Coase Klein and all of the staff at Ayers Rock Resort for doing just nothing short of a magnificent job. And I'd say to corporate Australia, hold your conferences at the Rock. They've got the most incredible conference facilities, and you've got access to some of the most incredible cultural experiences. And when you visit, I know that you can speak to Coase or any of the other people in the management and seek their advice about how your organisations and your companies can go about achieving the sort of things, iconic achievements, that has been achieved by this particular organisation. So it really is time to simply start backing ourselves, our natural and human resources, so the rest of the world can go on with backing us too. Corporate Australia, bring your experience, bring your business to the resort, allow yourself to be influenced by such a great corporate experience, and ensure that as you finish your experience at the resort, you not only take away part of the great spiritual centre of Australia and that wonderful cultural experience, but ensure that you share your experience with the rest of corporate Australia.